Welcome to Wire Guild. This tutorial I've called a potion bottle because in my very vivid imagination, to me this looks like a little bottle of potion. So I've used 0.8mm or 20 gauge round wire, some 0.4mm or 26 gauge round wire, and a long drop bead or a briolette, you know, the one with the little hole across the top. Or you could use graduated beads, sort of 10, 8, 6, 4mm round beads, and just thread them on one at a time to give you that impression of a drop bead, you know, sort of getting fatter at the bottom. But it's up to you. Now, this is a different one that I made earlier, and as you can see, the bail on this one's very, very straight and it's very sweet. But I'm going to do slightly different with the one that I'm going to do today. I'm going to do a fatter bail. But it's up to you. My bead is long, tapered, and has a hole straight through the middle. You could use a briolette with a hole across the top. Entirely up to you. Or like I say, graduated beads would look brilliant, especially if you did them in different colours. You know, like a chakra colours. They would look really lovely too. So to start off with, I've got my 0.8mm or 20 gauge. Now if you want to make this a bit heavier, say your bead's quite big, you could use 1mm wire, which would be 18 gauge. Entirely up to you on what you do with that. Now let me just find my ruler. I'm going to use approximately 12 inches of wire. It's really strange how many pieces of jewellery I make that use 12 inches or 30 centimetres of wire. I think it's just because it's like the length of the ruler, and it's just a nice length to work with. It's not that long that it's falling about all over the place, but you've got enough to actually make something. So I'm going to take two lengths, and this is dead soft copper wire. I like this pendant in copper. So I'm going to start at the end, and I've got probably, whoops, sorry, I'm just trying to get my fine wire here and it's not playing. Where's it gone? There we go. So I'm going to start at one end. I like to start on the right hand end of the wire, but that's because I'm right handed. Maybe if you're left handed you would work from the other side. So I have here probably about 2.5 inches, 3 inches, so I don't know, about 7 centimetres. And I'm going to start by wrapping my wire around one of the wires. 2, 3, 4 times, something like that, just to give you a nice strong anchor point. And once it's there, I'm going to bring these wires as close together as I can possibly get them and wrap around the other wire. So I've gone through the middle and I've come up and I'm wrapping around the top wire, back through the middle, gone around twice, back through the middle, and then wrap around the bottom. So it's always a figure of 8. So I'm going around and around, through the middle, back up and around. Now if I show you this one again, you can see how this one is super straight. Now I want a fat one this time. I want that top to be much wider. So I'm going to take my wires and bend them right out. Don't bend them out so they're flat, but a nice V shape. So I'm going to wrap around 1, push in, and 2, and I'm pushing in, and then around the other wire, 1, 2, through the middle, to the other side, figure of 8, 1, 2, and as you can see, I am using my thumb and my index finger. It wrecks your fingernails, but I'm pushing them in each time, so I'm pushing all the way down, making sure that wire is tight and neat, and that push in. If you don't do this push in, you will end up with the wires not sitting as close as they possibly can. Now that doesn't sound that bad, but then when you do push them in, because we're on a slope, you can imagine that wire is then going to be a bit baggy because it's actually going to be too big. There's too much wire going across than the distance that it's actually filling. So you end up with a slightly messy and untidy bail. Now I know that we all need practice and we all need to learn it and everybody can improve, but if you get your bail super neat, believe me, people see the whole piece as being super neat, and it does add to how professional your work looks. And if you are going to be doing this to be selling things, it's nice to have it look, you know, super professional. So I'm still doing the same things. I'm going round twice, pushing in with my finger, through the middle and round the other side, through the middle, round, round, back through the middle, round. And you can see that that pushing is there all the time. I also move my left hand. My left hand is not sitting perfectly still. I'm wiggling it around. Now let's see how much I've got. Going across there, I've probably got about ½ an inch. That's wide enough, I think. So I'm going to bring the other two ends in. Now working on an outward or increase or an incline is much easier than working on a decline. Your wire will slip and it will try and wriggle its way down, giving you that bagginess that I was talking about before. So you can feel like you need about 6 hands, because can you see how that slips? If I can hold that with my fingernail while I wrap the second one around and then go to the other side and do the other one and then hold that one. Honestly, you need to be an octopus. Now, if you really were bothered about this, you could cast that wire off and start from the narrow point. You'd have to feed the wire in and out every time you did it. However, it depends on which you find most difficult. If you hate feeding wire in and out of a small space, it's more difficult to start at the narrow point and work up to the work that you've already got. If you like to have a nice open end, which I must admit I do, you will put up with the fact that the wire is slipping and you're having to push it back all the time, and just, you know, you'll deal with it. Now this is not going anywhere near as well as I would like it to go, possibly because I've got this at arm's reach underneath the camera and I haven't got it tucked into my chest where it would normally be. However, I'm going to, because it's not doing what I want, that's quite good, because I think it's always good for you to see how other people remedy things that aren't going as well as they would like. I aren't going to be able to get this perfect diamond shape, because if I want to keep these these wires pushed up, which they're just not doing, I'm going to have to do something about it. So let me see if I can get any more in. Can you see how I'm pulling the wires out, the frame wires? Yeah, it's just not sitting how I want. It's because they've slid too far, and now the wires that I've wrapped around are too short for me to slide them all the way up. I'm just seeing if I can hold them far enough to rectify it further down. This will be the back of the bail. However, I do like my backs to be as pretty as my fronts. So if I can't make it the shape that I want it to be and it to be neat, so I'm going to try pushing it with a pair of pliers and see if that works. I'll change the shape. So I've pulled these wires out, so it's almost like you know, a spade in cards, like that sort of shape. And now I'm going to wrap round. Because I've pulled those wires out, it's suddenly much easier, because there's some tension on those wires for me to get. So I'm just going to wrap this exactly the same as I was doing before. It's just that the shape has altered. I'd rather have an unusual shape and neat weaving than a regular mirrored shape back and front and untidy weaving. Not not weeding. That would be like garden things, and I don't do that. So I'm just still going round twice, figure of 8, cross to the other side, and back. But you can see now I'm almost going parallel. Okay, let me have a look. How straight is that? Much better. Kind of a pretty little shape. It's almost like a fancy little leaf shape. I haven't done a bale this shape before. It's kind of nice. You'd be amazed how many things pop up that are lovely that you've had to do because of necessity, not because they were designed. So, figure of 8. I'm aiming to get the same amount of weaving, the same length as my triangle, if you like, that's going to go on the front. So I'm just pushing these in really, really tight. It wrecks your fingernails. I think I'm about there now, you know. So I'm going to take that as my fold. So let's see if that side is as long. So if I put that on my ruler, I have got just over sort of half an inch either side. So they balance in length anyway. I'm going to detach myself from the reel, which I've been working from. Round nose pliers, grip, and then I'm going to bend the work. Don't move the pliers, just use the pliers as a shape that you're going around. Now I'm going to go in at the other side with the thick end and make sure, because your pliers are tapered, and if you pull that tight over that, you're going to get a tapered bale, which we don't want because one side will be fatter than the other. So just in both sides. That's the front, and I've got this lovely triangle shape, and let's just get rid of that wire. That's the wire where I originally started. So I'm going to trim that off as close as I can get. Trim, trim. Ah, I've got my old snips. No, there. Problem with buying the same snips all the time is you can pick up the wrong one sometimes. So I'm smoothing that down so there's no little sharp edge. Okay. Now I've got 2 wires coming down on the front, and my bead is going to go in, in there, in the back. Now, if this was a briolette, it's not, it's got the hole going, but if it had the hole going across like a briolette, I could take my fine wire and I could just thread it through that hole, and that would hang there beautifully. So that would be how you would do it if you had a briolette. I don't have a briolette. So I'm going to get myself another piece of 0.8mm or 20 gauge copper wire. I'll just get myself a piece of that. You could probably use a piece of scrap up for this actually. Now let me get this. I could make a simple little loop to go on the end to stop my bead falling off. However, I don't want to. I want to show you something slightly prettier. Well, I think it's prettier. Taking your round nose pliers, I'm going to grip the very tip of the wire with the very tip of my round nose pliers. So I'm getting the tiniest curl possible. Sorry, that's better. I went out of shot. And I'm going to do that till it goes all the way around and the wire touches. Now pop the pliers. The pliers don't want to go back in. I'm trying to do it so you can see it, and getting the angles right is really awkward. I can't quite get a hold of it. It's alright, I'll do it a different way. I'm going to grip this side and just turn the wire up so it goes beyond the edge. Then with flat pliers, not round ones, because it makes it easier, I'm gently going to wind the wire around in a little spiral. It's only a little tiny spiral. It's only going to go around so that you've got like 2 full revolutions. Now I'm going to look at the bottom, and that completely covers the hole. That's as much as I want. I don't need it to go any bigger. If you had a much fatter bead that you were using, you may need to go around more times. I'm gripping right across the middle of the spiral, and I'm bending the wire upwards so it sticks up from the spiral. Yeah. Okay. Then I'm going to grip again and bend that wire back down over the spiral and then squash it down. Make sure it's in the middle. I want it to cover the little tiny hole that is in the middle of the spiral, and I'm going to cross that down, grip it and bend the wire up. So it's almost as if my wire is coming out of that central spot. I do have a skill set tutorial on flat spirals if you want to watch that. I might give you some more details. And then when I pull my wire in, you can see I get this lovely little spiral. It's not quite flat, so take the back of the pliers and just flatten it down. In a way, you're making a pretty head pin. I mean, if you're happy doing bald ends, again, with a torch, there's a skill set video on that as well if you want to watch that. You could do that and have that at the end, but up to you. Now, to fasten this in there, I could pass the wire through the weaving. But what will happen if I do that is I will pull my weaving out so that you get a hole in it and it doesn't look anywhere near as neat. I was trying to poke it through to show you, but it doesn't want to go. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a tiny circle in the top. I'm just a little bit above the bead. I'm going to wrap all the way around, go past, and then wrap around the stem. I've still got the pliers in the loop to make a wrapped loop for the bead. And if you're not sure about that, there's 4 different tutorials on making a bracelet that are all free in the free section that you can look, and they tell you how to do that. Let me just tighten that. Now I've got a nice loop and loads of bits on my paper. So I'm going to take this fine wire that I was weaving with, and I'm going to pass it through the loop and slide it up, and then I'm going to go to the other wire and weave. So around twice, 1, 2, and then when I go back to the other side, I'm going to go through the loop. So it's now got 2 thicknesses of this fine wire going through the loop. I'm just wriggling it to get it in the middle. Pull that loop through, and then we'll just wrap that up. Just tighten that down. And then I'll wrap that against the other side. Now that is perfectly enough to hold that bead nice and secure. Again, if you were using multiple round beads, you would have put them on in the same way, and that would have gone through. If you'd done your briolet, it's how you would have continued with your briolet. You'd have gone through the wire at the top, the hole at the top, sorry, not the wire at the top, to the other side and wrapped it off. So I have these 2 long wires, 2 little short pokey wires. The long ones are going to be my design wires. So you can do any kind of weave you want on these wires that you want. I've got a little bit of wire here, so I'm going to use this up first. And to start off with, I'm just going to do a very simple, very tight figure of 8. So I've gone around my first wire, through the middle, push up, around the second wire, back through the middle, back around the first. Now, I don't often use a straightforward figure of 8 because they're very, very easy for them to look untidy. If you try and spread the wires at all, they're so difficult to keep even because you don't have that extra wrap. You know, like we did on the bail, we went around once, twice, and then did the figure of 8. That's what holds it really, really neat. But if your wires are staying very close together like mine are here, I want them as close as I can possibly get them. In that case, you're absolutely fine. It's only when you're wanting to keep a distance between the wires, you know, like an open gap, that really this isn't the best weave to do. But like I say, with a tight one it's fine. So I'm just doing this figure of 8, and I'm going to keep going for a little while. I'll probably actually keep going until I run out of this wire. It'll be a great way for me to show you how to attach a new piece in, so that you don't get, you know, like a lump or something that says this is where we've attached a new wire. If you can't keep these closed up with your fingers, you can use a pair of pliers to push them back in. I know I prefer to work at the end of the wire and then move the weaving up, but with this pendant it's just not feasible to do that. It needs to be done in situ, if you like. You'll probably have an awful lot less difficulty than me, because you'll be sitting nice and comfy. Just going in and out. There we go. Let's have a look now. I haven't done very much, but I'm going to start showing you where it's going to go. So I've bent it so that it's going to come around, and then I'm easing it with my fingers so it's slightly rounded. I don't want this really tight, but I do want it to create like a cuff around the stone. Yeah, I'm going to need quite a bit more there before I've got a reasonable little ring going around the top of my bead. So I'm going to keep weaving until I run out of wire. Just tucking it in. Did you notice how once I tried to get it wrapped around the stone, what I did was I just actually pulled it out a bit so that I can get to the wires rather than trying to work so close to the bead. So I've just skipped a bit there because it must be getting very boring for you watching me, and I've come to the end of my wire, and I'm just going to wrap that around a couple of times just so that it's anchored and it stays put, and then I'm going to trim that off as close as possible. Snip. And smooth the little sharpie bit down onto the wire that it's wrapped around. Not wrapped around, but wrapped around, and then push it up tight. I'm going to change the weave here, and I'm going to change it to something that I really like the look of, particularly when it's oxidized. I think it's a lovely weave. It's the next bit. I do like to get a couple of different ones in this though, because it adds to the texture of the piece and the look if you've got different weaves going on. So I'm going to cut myself another length of the fine wire off, and then I'm going to start, come here, just check which way that I was going round, hold that in place, and then wrap around. Now I went round sort of twice to cast off. So, oops, wire's going everywhere, it's hitting the camera. 1, 2. Then I'm going to go all the way out and round. Might go round another time. There we go. This is just making sure that we're absolutely solid there, and that nothing's going to go anywhere. Then I'm going to go up and around both wires. Yeah, so that it's over both. Now this wire where I started, I'm just gripping it and I'm pulling it as tight as I can get it with my pliers, and then I'm going to trim it off and smooth it down so that there's no end bits. If I get that out of the way now, I'm not catching myself on it each time I sort of go around. Okay, let's have a look. So we've just come around both wires, so I'm now going back to my underneath wire or bottom wire or wire that is closest to me, the one that I was wrapping around constantly, and I'm going to wrap around that. So I've done 1, 2, 3, 4, and then all the way around both wires, and then back around the bottom wire, push it all up with the pliers, make sure it's super tight, super neat. 1, that's the second one, 2. No, you don't need to see me doing it, you've got the gist. So I've done some more, so I'm now going to just ease this around my bead. Remember, I'm not going super tight. I want it to offset the bottom of the bail so it doesn't look like there's a, like a stop. It doesn't look like it's two pieces. And just wrap in a spiral down and around the pendant. Now I could stop there, but I don't think it goes down far enough. To me that's not balanced, so I need to do a bit more weaving. So there we go, that's a bit more weaving, exactly the same design. So I wrap around 4 times and then wrap around both of them once. So let's just ease that down and around the bead. That's better, that's a better balance. You're getting a nice part of the bead showing, but you've got a nice bit of work at the top. So I've got these 2 wires here now. What I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the different things you could do with your 2 bits of wire. I could wrap them like that so they went back and up and over the bail. However, if I did that, let me just even that up a bit, there isn't really enough wire to tuck in anywhere. I'll bring those together from the back. So I could cross that wire so you get like a little diamond shape showing. Again, don't really have enough wire. If you left more wire at home, you could do that if you wanted. What I'm trying to do is just show you how you can make every single piece different. You can take your wire that you've got and put it in different places. If I wanted this to crisscross and go up the front, even with this limited amount of wire, I could take these ends, and actually if I was going to do that I would trim them off a bit shorter and tuck them inside the bail. I would then flatten them into position so they were gripping on that edge wire of the bail, and you would have this little crisscross going across the front of your bail wires, just neatening up either side, so you would look like that. However, I don't want that. So I'm going to pull that out again. I want to show you though, you can do this, you can lay wires on and you can have a look and you think, do I want it to look like that, you know? And if you don't want it to look like that, look, you see, I didn't even press it down, it doesn't want to come out. So I'm going to trim these right down, because what I'm going to do is I'm just going to curl the ends of these so they make 2 tiny little curls. So I've trimmed that. I'll get my round nose pliers, grip on at the end, twist it round, make it into a little curl, and I'm going to make it so it sits flat sort of into the side of that bail. Now, I'm not going to have it, they could lay across the front, they could lay down onto the top of the work that you've just done with the weaving, but I'm just going to have mine sitting in the sides. I don't want them to be that noticeable, I just want the wires out of the way in such a way that the weaving's not going to slide off them, or, you know, they're nice and secure. So we just tuck that in there. Okay, that one tucked in there. Now I have got my fine wire, which I was weaving with, to get rid of. So let's just come here. Because I'd already wrapped that around 3 or 4 times, ready to do the next loop over, I can just trim that off and smooth it down. Now one of the wires I like to take down the bead, so I'm going to carry on that lovely sweeping spiral all the way down to the bottom of the bead. The other one I'm going to go upwards. So let's have a look what looks good. Come here. Let's do the bottom first. Now I've got this through this wire. So I'm just going to wrap around that spiral and it will tuck ever so slightly underneath. All you're doing is you're pulling against that top fastener, so there is room for this to happen. And then you just tuck that end in underneath the spiral that we made for the bottom of the pendant. If you didn't make a spiral, if you made like a loop, it will fasten above the loop. If you balled the end with a torch, it'll fasten above that. So just wrap round once. Now my other wire, I'm going to take this back up the piece by just gentle swirly whirlies. Now when I get to the top, if I wanted a central line at my bail, I could have one. But I think I'm going to have some just little curls. There is a slight gap between the bottom of the bail and where the weaving starts. So by making this into a little curly rosette thing, wrap the wire around the back, I can totally disguise that and it will all merge into one coherent piece. So we trim that off and then flatten it in. You just get it to tuck underneath, that's all. Right, no sharp bits. And basically that is your little potion bottle pendant. Once on a chain, it'll hang like that. Looks lovely, very popular. So you can have that fat bail or you can have a thin bail. Entirely up to you. Actually, I can't wait to see what you do with yours. And if you could post some photos either on the Facebook page or the forum, it would be great. That's mine when it's been oxidized. And that's a similar one, but done with a very straight bail instead of the fat bail. Thank you very much for watching. Happy wrapping.